You're watching Euronews Tonight. I'm Mariopol, and these are the headlines this hour. Rescue operations resume in Mariopol to get more people out of the Azovstal steelworks despite sustained Russian attacks. President Zelensky says conditions in the city are an example of torture. Prime Minister Viktor Orban says Hungary won't support an EU ban on Russian oil, saying the embargo would be like dropping an atomic bomb on the economy.
Here in theCUBE, we look at the latest online misinformation that falsely claims Finland is sending tanks to its eastern border with Russia.
And a tough night for the Tories as Labour makes significant gains in local elections across the UK. But it could be the Liberal Democrats that cause the biggest headache for Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Good evening. Rescue operations have resumed in Mariupol as more civilians flee Ukraine's besieged port city despite sustained Russian attacks. The UN and Red Cross claim that around 500 people have been rescued from the southeastern city and that safe passage operations are ongoing. Evacuation teams are working to save civilians trapped in the Azovstal steel plant, Ukraine's last stronghold in the city. But intelligence reports suggest that Russian troops are continuing their assault on the site. In a video addressed to a UK foreign policy think tank, President Volodymyr Zelensky described conditions in Mariupol as an example of torture.
So death is not caused by war. This is not a military event. This is torturing to death. This is terrorism and hatred. Mariupol will never fall. I'm not talking about heroism, the fighters, or the army that we have. But there is nothing there to fall apart. It's already devastated. There is no place, there is no structure. It's all destroyed completely.
Well, following the latest developments in Ukraine, we're joined by correspondent Sasha Vakulina. Sasha, thanks for being with us on set today again. So we know that, of course, these evacuation efforts are reported to be underway to get those people out from the Azovstal steelworks and to safety. What more can you tell us?
Well, we do know, of course, this is really hard to get the confirmation on the information and the reports coming from Mariupol. The third United Nations operation was underway today on Friday to evacuate Ukrainian civilians from Azovstal, but up to 200 civilians still believed to be remaining there in Azovstal, together with Ukrainian defenders who are still, of course, there at the steelworks. According to RIA Novosti, this is Russia state-owned media, 12 civilians left Azovstal. But since it is reported by Russian state media, the questions are where exactly were they taken and evacuated, whether they went through the humanitarian corridor from Mariupol through Berdyansk to Zaporizhia. The heavy shelling and the attacks and the storming at the Azovstal continues. This is confirmed by the Institute for the Study of War and also by the UK Defence Ministry and their intelligence update. And the renewed effort by Russia to secure Azovstal and complete the capture of Mariupol is also likely linked to the upcoming Victory Day, the 9th of May in Russia, all the commemorations and Putin's desire to have sort of a symbolic success for that day.
So let's talk about that then. How important a win is this then for President Putin ahead of May the 9th then?
Well, some of the leaders at the self-proclaimed Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republic said earlier that there were plans to hold a parade in Mariupol on the 9th of May. Today, Peskov, who is the Kremlin spokesperson, he declined to confirm whether there will be a parade, whether there will be any commemorations in Mariupol on the Victory Day. He said, quote, "I cannot tell on behalf of the military if there are any plans." Now, what we do know now that in Moscow on the 9th of May on Monday, there will be a parade, and we do know that Putin will be there, he will participate, and he will give a speech. Western leaders, and there are some sources that are saying that whether Putin could use this parade to make a statement. Now, this we do not know. What exactly is he going to say on the 9th of May in that speech? There are some rumors there might be an announcement of the escalation of military action, and perhaps even for the first time he might use the word war in Ukraine on the Victory Day on the 9th of May. We do know that the parade will be rather smaller. There will be troops, tanks, rockets, intercontinental ballistic missiles paraded in Moscow, and also Reuters agency reports that according to Russia's defense ministry, for the first time since 2010, the Doomsday Command plane, which would carry Russia's top brass in the event of a nuclear war, will join that parade and will fly over Moscow in a rather strong message from Putin.
Right, well, I think lots of people will be waiting to see what Putin, of course, does say in that May 9th address. Sasha, thank you so much as always. Thank you so much. Now, meanwhile, the EU looks poised to amend its proposal to ban Russian oil imports amid pressure from disgruntled member states. Reports suggest that Brussels will tweak its embargo plans to allow for Hungary, Slovakia and the Czech Republic to purchase Russian oil beyond 2022. Now, EU officials are working to finalise a sixth package of sanctions amid concern of growing division amongst the bloc. Let's go over to Shona Murray in Brussels. Shona, good to see you. So this sanctioning then of Russian oil was always going to be a tough one to get unilateral agreement. So how far apart are member states then?
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, the sixth package of sanctions cuts much deeper. It's such a permanent and consequential proposal from the European Commission because some countries, in particular Hungary, Slovakia and the Czech Republic, rely so heavily, Hungary 100%, on Russian oil. And as you mentioned at the start of the show, we heard Viktor Orban saying that it would be like dropping an economic nuclear bomb, which obviously is hugely exaggerated. But the EU's decided now to offer a further extension for Hungary and Slovakia and Czech Republic, meaning that they could phase out Russian oil by the end of 2024, which gives them plenty of time. Yet there is no decision on that because Hungary is still holding out. And we know that EU ambassadors from all 27 member states have been negotiating this again today. They've finished their talks and they're going to resume them tomorrow morning.
OK, well, let's pick up on that then. So Hungary, of course, has been making a lot of noise. It's possibly saying it's going to use its veto power to stop an agreement. If they do that, then that's not really the kind of unified picture that Brussels really wants to send Russia, is it, Shona?
Well, definitely not. And obviously, this is a response to one of the most brutal invasions, the likes of which we haven't seen this century, particularly in Europe. And we're hearing so much about the war crimes being committed by Russian troops in Ukraine. So it's extremely serious. And it simply can't be that the EU wouldn't be able to move on this package of sanctions. It's so important because of the nature of oil and how much it finances Putin's war machine. So nobody believes actually that that Viktor Orban will use his veto and bring down this package of sanctions, because remember, the sanctions package has to be agreed unanimously by all member states. I think there's a feeling, having spoken to sources, that he's holding out for maybe some money to help with the infrastructure to phase out the Russian oil and perhaps a lengthier phase-out period. I think there's a feeling that they will get to this point. It's just when, not necessarily if.
Well, no doubt those meetings are going to run all weekend. Shona Murray, thanks for the update from Brussels. Thank you so much. Now, social media users have falsely claimed that Finland is moving military tanks to its eastern border with Russia. Matthew, in our social media desk in the Cube, has been looking at the latest online misinformation. Matthew?
So far, the misinformation about the war has predominantly focused on the military operations of both Russia and Ukraine. But we are now seeing false claims about alleged troop movements in other European countries. A viral video has misleadingly suggested that Finland is moving army tanks towards its eastern border with Russia. In this footage, you can see a freight train carrying a number of tanks and military equipment across a bridge. And these posts were shared on Telegram, Twitter and Facebook in a number of European languages. This, of course, comes as Finland and its neighbour Sweden are debating joining the NATO military alliance, despite opposition and threats from Russia. But these videos have been taken out of context. They actually show tanks going the opposite direction towards a planned military exercise in the west of Finland. On Twitter, the Finnish Defence Forces said that these allegations about movements towards Russia are not true, and that this is a mechanised exercise taking place in the villages of Niinisalo and Saklia. You can use open source tools like Google Earth to try and find where those videos were taken, and you might come across this footage showing that same building, that same train line and that same tower there. This was taken in the city of Tampere in Finland, and by analysing that, you can then prove that that train is indeed travelling westwards. It is going towards those villages where the exercises are taking place, and it is not going towards Russia's eastern border. So those claims are false. But Mariam, this just perhaps proves that the misinformation related to the war in Ukraine is now not just focusing on the operations taking place in Kyiv.
Okay, Matthew, thanks for debunking all of that for us. Thank you. Now, Sri Lankan police used water cannons and tear gas to disperse demonstrators during anti-government protests outside Parliament. Shops, offices, schools were closed on Friday as protesters voiced their anger over the government's handling of the country's worst economic crisis since independence from Britain in 1948. Fuel shortages and rising prices have left the island nation on the brink of bankruptcy, with its foreign reserves plummeting to below 48 million euros. China's National Health Commission said the coronavirus situation is stable, with numbers of daily new cases declining. It says the number of new cases over the past week has dropped by 80% compared to those in April. Shanghai, one of the most affected cities, is now easing its shutdown, with more people allowed out of their homes as daily new cases continue to decline. Now, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says it was a tough night for the Conservatives as his party lost control of key London councils in the UK local elections. In a shock result, the Labour Party swept to victory in Wandsworth, a long-held Conservative stronghold in the capital. Labour leader Keir Starmer called the election a big turning point as he celebrated his party's win in Barnet. Although admitting a bruising, Johnson's Tories managed to hold off a catastrophic defeat across the country. Meanwhile, counting is underway for Northern Ireland's General Assembly election. Sinn Féin's leader in the north, Michelle O'Neill, secured her seat in West Belfast. The party are poised to take an overall victory. It would be the first time an Irish Nationalist Party wins a majority instalment. But Northern Ireland's largest unionist party, the DUP, are threatening to boycott the Assembly if Sinn Féin are in power. DUP leader Jeffrey Donaldson retained his seat in the first count for Lagan Valley. Well, joining me now to get a sense of the picture across the UK are Ken Murray in Dublin and Tyke Enright in London. Tyke, I'll come to you first. So it's uncomfortable but not really catastrophic for Boris Johnson. Labour, of course, have taken big wins in London, but across the country, it's really been a mixed bag.
Yeah, I think that's right. Certainly there have been notable losses. You mentioned one of those flagship councils here in London, Wandsworth, that was lost by the Conservatives. A very poor performance in Scotland too, but elsewhere in England, not as bad as some might have feared. And while the main opposition Labour Party has made gains, they haven't hoovered up all of the Conservatives' losses. There have been proportionally bigger gains for smaller parties like the Liberal Democrats and the Green Party as well. For Johnson personally, whose leadership has obviously been on the rocks in recent months because of all those revelations about parties being held in Downing Street at the height of lockdown, I don't think it is a knockout blow, even if we have seen some of his party members who've lost their seats in these elections calling on him to go, saying that he is to blame, and at least one other senior member of this parliament behind me here coming off the fence and saying that he should resign. I think we're still some way away from that just yet.
OK, Ken, coming to you, and also the weather does look really fantastic where you are. So we've got these first results coming in. Sinn Féin's Michelle O'Neill and the DUP's Jeffrey Donaldson are in on the first count. But the big story is the potential sweep by Sinn Féin.
That's right. The indication so far that Sinn Féin are on course to win the majority of seats in the new Northern Ireland Assembly. Now, to try and explain the significance of that to an audience beyond Ireland, it should be borne in mind that the British divided Ireland back in 1921 because the majority of people in Northern Ireland, the Protestant community, are unionists. They want Northern Ireland to remain under British rule. And this will be the first time in 100 years that a pro-Irish unification party, as in Sinn Féin, will return the greatest number of political representatives to the regional parliament. Now, this is quite symbolic and hugely significant because it reflects a major change that's been happening in Northern Ireland over the last 20 years, whereby the number of pro-Irish unity Catholics have been growing in numbers and the number of pro-British Protestant Unionists have been decreasing in numbers. So we're looking at a major shift, a major change that's happening before our eyes here in Northern Ireland. And if Sinn Féin do emerge as the biggest party in the new Northern Ireland Assembly, calls will grow very loud in the coming months on the British government to grant a referendum to deal with the unification of Ireland. So we should know more about the outcome of the construct of the new Northern Ireland Assembly in the hours ahead.
OK, so a major shift there potentially for Northern Ireland. Ty, coming back to you, if the results of these local elections were to be projected onto a general election vote, what do you think the outcome could be then for the main parties?
Well, the public broadcaster here, the BBC, has been crunching the numbers, and their projection is that you'd have Labour as the biggest party with 35% of the vote, and the Conservatives the second biggest party on 30%. A role reversal there on the last election. But worth pointing out, although these local elections are an interesting barometer of where public opinion is now, there should be a health warning on them, really. Worth stressing, not everywhere in Britain was voting today. Yes, in Scotland, yes, in Wales, but only in parts of England and mainly the big towns and cities. And of course, turnout is generally lower in local elections than they are in general elections. And indeed, some people, when it comes to electing councillors, do genuinely vote on local issues like the frequency of their bin collections. So while this is a bad result for the Conservative Party, and Boris Johnson has acknowledged that, it was widely predicted, it's been factored in all those ructions over his leadership in recent weeks and months. Some might see it as another nail in the coffin of his political career or of his leadership, but I don't think it's the final one.
OK, so Tories potentially shouldn't hit the panic button just yet. Ken, coming back to you then. So the rise of the centre ground parties like the Alliance could obviously lead to a significant change in Northern Irish politics. Now, if the results play out as expected, can't they then argue for having a legitimate right to be part of any sort of power-sharing agreement?
Well, in theory, yes, but in reality, no, because the likelihood is that Sinn Féin, which is a pro-Irish unity party, will emerge with the greatest number of seats. And then on the other side, the orange side, you will have the pro-British Democratic Unionist Party with the second largest amount of seats in the regional parliament. And normally that's the way things have been divvied up since 1998 when the British-Irish Peace Agreement was signed, that it's a case of the two major blocs determine how the parliament and the administration is run. So the centre ground, the Alliance Party, which is a sort of a centrist party, liberal party, it simply won't have enough seats to be, if you like, a power breaker in any new administration. So the likelihood is that while the centre ground is growing, it's not growing fast enough at this stage to have any say in the outcome of this election. And as you also said in your introduction, the signs are that even if Sinn Féin emerge with the greatest number of seats in the new Northern Ireland Regional Assembly, the Democratic Unionist Party have said they will not sit with Sinn Féin unless the government in London addresses concerns over the Northern Ireland Protocol. This is the, if you like, the notional border in the Irish Sea whereby goods entering Northern Ireland from GB have to be checked. And people in the DUP, the pro-British DUP, believe that this protocol is another incremental step towards a united Ireland, something they strongly oppose.
OK, gentlemen, we're going to leave it there. But Ty Genwright in London, Ken Murray in Dublin, thanks so much for giving your input into the programme tonight. Thank you so much. Now, Brussels is celebrating the life of one of Hollywood's biggest icons, Audrey Hepburn, by dedicating a garden to her in the heart of the city where she was born. Judith Prescott has a story.
She already has her star on Hollywood Boulevard, and now actress Audrey Hepburn has her own garden in a square in Brussels, near the house where she was born in 1929. Visitors to the Audrey Hepburn garden are greeted by a small bronze bust, identical to the one already installed in Arnhem in the Netherlands. Her eldest son was there for the inauguration.
I'm often asked why she is still so alive. After having thought about it for 30 years,
Let's take the example of Elizabeth Taylor, who is the great star in the firmament of Hollywood. At the time, certainly untouchable. Audrey Hepburn is more like the girl next door, who goes out into the world in nothing but her little black dress. She is one of us. I think we see her as part of our side of the tracks.
She was an Oscar-winning actress at age 23 for her role in Rome and Holiday, and a world fashion icon as a muse for Givenchy. At the age of 40, in the midst of her fame, she decided to stop her career to devote herself to humanitarian aid.
Audrey Hepburn was born nearby. She was an extraordinary actor. She was also the first woman to become an ambassador for UNICEF in 1988, and she was an outstanding character, I will say. What better ambassador could there be for Echelles than Audrey Hepburn?
She had her heart in the right place. She was a great person, very human.
I did give performances to collect money for the underground, which always needed money.
Hepburn died in Switzerland in 1993, aged 63.
And that definitely looks like a great place to visit in Brussels. Well, that's it from myself and the team, but we leave you with a no comment from Mexico City, where residents marched and fired blanks to celebrate Cinco de Mayo. Thank you for watching Euronews Tonight.
Ya llegó la jefa ahí. Ella es mi hija.